so far what we have done is that we found one way to derive the transition formula for perturbation theory. So this is the part 2 of time dependent perturbation theory. Here we will learn to do this thing formally using the interaction picture or using the full machinery of interaction picture, and you will see there is a much more elegant way to derive the same formulas and an elegant way to remember and associate a physical picture of what is happening with that. So this is the most important thing we'll learn in this section of this chapter, and then we'll do some problems, some very special problems where time dependent perturbation theory is useful, and these problems are not just exercise problems, they are actual practical applications where eventually we'll learn to estimate numbers. So let's dive into this formalism, which you have learned already in the previous class of when we learned about these different pictures of time dependence in quantum mechanics. So now we will use this to derive this the form of perturbation theory. So let's use the equation 14 and 15 and the picture dictionary from the previous lecture and multiply the equation 14. So let's just go to 14 just to remind ourselves what was 14. So this was the interaction picture propagator in equation 14. So what we will do, and start with this interaction picture propagator, which we estimated using which we written in a series form. We know that this is a Dyson series and it's basically a self-consistent equation, that's why it takes this power series form. So in equation 14 we'll multiply by Schrodinger picture US0 T0 in the front and express Vi in terms of Vs, the interaction picture potential, time dependent potential in terms of the Schrodinger potential, because we want to now express everything in Schrodinger picture, because Schrodinger picture makes most sense to us. That is the thing which we commonly use, and we will try to make our physical pictures based on Schrodinger picture. So let's try with start with the US, which is the Schrodinger propagator, which we obtain after this small exercise. You can do this one line of algebra by yourself and check this. So you will get the US TT0 is by US0 TT0, which is a 0th order term, and this 0 is nothing but the propagator, Schrodinger propagator with H0 Hamiltonian, H0 part of the Hamiltonian. So now using this we write down this in a series form where everything is simple Schrodinger picture expression. So the first term is US0 TT0, US0 T prime T0. So we will immediately see what is the application of that. So as we can see that, and then there is a VST and US0 T prime T0. So what happens in this term? This is a propagator which takes you from T0 to T prime, and this another propagator takes you from T0 to T, and there is so T prime is some intermediate step, so you integrate over that T prime. So we will immediately see how to interpret this whole thing and how the picture comes up. So now if I do some algebra, I basically rearrange all the terms, I get this form which is US TT0, it is equal to the US0 TT0 and this series term. Now each of these term in the series, there is a simple way to remember and interpret it. So let's see, let's try to do that diagrammatically, because we have seen earlier also these diagrammatic ways, and eventually this kind of diagrammatics leads the way to much more sophisticated techniques in perturbation theory, diagrammatic techniques in perturbation theory called Feynman diagram. And it's usually our brain is good at thinking or interpreting things when it is in a pictorial form. So that way it is much more difficult to remember the equation 16. So it is much more easier when you replace it diagrammatically to see what happens there. So let's say I write this propagator as US, which takes you from T0 to T. This is this side, the left hand side. So right hand side, I write the first term US0 like this, where every time there is a so every time there is an arrow, that means it implies a propagator. So this propagator takes you from T0 to T, and this I just write it by a simple line with two arrows. Or I can just give it one arrow also. It's not much different. So now the second term. The second term takes you from, so look at what is happening here. You are going from t0 to t prime. So t0 to t prime, the second term takes you from this us0 takes you from t0 to t prime with while propagating with the Hamiltonian h0. Then it sees a potential Vs. So that is represented by a black dot. Then you go from t prime to t by another propagator us0, which is again evolution by h0. Now this t prime, the intermediate time t prime, can be anything, any time t, in between t to t naught. So you integrate over that whole thing. So that is this dt prime, and the integration can go from t naught to t. That is maximum the range. So that's the interpretation of this term. Now, how about the second term? The second term is again the third term is again similar with two blobs where the us0 takes you from t naught to t double prime, which is till here. This time block is t double prime, and then you encounter the potential, and then you go from t double prime to t prime, and then you encounter the potential again, and then you go from t prime to t. And every time this wherever you are encountering this intermediate potential, you integrate this t intermediate times can be anything. So you integrate over this entire range. The first one is t double prime. It can go from t naught to t prime, and the second one goes from t prime to t naught to t. And we will see later there will be ways to ease these nested integrals and write it in terms of independent integrals. But that is basically the interpretation of the whole. So the take home part of this exercise is to remember or understand this formula 16, which is the Schrodinger propagator, which takes you from t to t naught, expressed perturbatively in terms of the unperturbed and perturbed part of the Hamiltonian. The unperturbed part is h0, which is responsible for the propagation. So the which is hidden inside us0, and the perturbed part is this Vst. The part whatever the perturbation is, and this is written in a series expansion form. Each of these terms will have a coefficient, which is where the expansion is I by h bar. Now it might appear it is not really a approximation in the sense, because this series doesn't look like it's a converging series. H bar is a small quantity and it's in denominator. So where is the we have not yet plugged in the epsilon. The epsilon comes as a prefactor in terms of Bs, which we will do. But that is basically the formula, and you should learn to think pictorially in terms of what is happening in these formulas, in this power series, and it's a physical picture emerging out of that. So a particle is propagating from t naught to t prime, then it sees a potential, and then it propagates from again t prime to t, and this can happen any intermediate time t prime, so that you integrate over the t prime. So this is the process. So now let's look at, so that is what I just described to you. So that is I have written in here. So the LHS is basically the complete Schrodinger propagator, and right hand side will be a series expansion form, which is in terms of HS0, the unperturbed Hamiltonian. The second term, if I read it from right to left, the system evolves from t naught to t prime in response to HS naught, then it interacts with the perturbation Vs, and then it responds to HS naught till time t. And the integral over t prime is sum over the possible times, all the possible times at which a single encounter Vs could have taken place, and that ranges from t naught to t, and so on in the higher term. So now we want to revisit the transition amplitude, which we just worked out by direct method using perturbation theory, using this propagator. So what is that? So that what we are interested in what is the transition amplitude, probability amplitude, for the system to go from the unperturbed eigenstate I naught, which is no longer an eigenstate, it is just a state for the full Hamiltonian, but it's an eigenstate for the original Hamiltonian, where the system also starts within that states. So what is the probability for the system to go from this unperturbed eigenstate I naught to f naught, which are just two states for the full problem, and we want to compute this quantity again using this formalism. So now onwards we will use every time Schrodinger picture, which is the picture which we are totally familiar with. we use the interaction picture to make sense of the propagator and derive this nice formula which we wrote down in equation 16. But now we have that formula, we will use our typical familiar Schrodinger picture and we drop the subscript from now onwards. So let's go back to the equation 12 and see what the equation 12 tells us when I plug into this formula. Okay, so now I have this UTT0 and I plug into this USTT0 as from this and sandwich it between these two states I0 and F0. The first term is simple HS0 propagator, it will give me just this. The second term, you can work this out, will be very simple to evaluate this, and third term will be this, like so on. It's actually very easy now to write down an arbitrarily high order term in a very easy manner, and then very easily I can physically interpret it. So if I try to do this or derive this arbitrarily high order term using the previous method, it is much more tedious and longer. But here, since we had the series form which we derived very nicely from the Dyson series, it is now very easy to write down an arbitrarily nth order term. So that you can just try to internalize this formula a bit and then you will understand that. So what we have done, we have just taken this formula in equation 16 and sandwich F0 and I0 from both sides, and we wrote down all the HS0 and everything clearly, and then that's what we got. So and in between, of course, we introduce a complete set of when we go to higher orders, we introduce a complete set of eigenstate N0 N0 and sum over this N0, and that we need to do that because it could be in all the possible intermediate, because there is no guarantee that this term have to be evaluated only over a specific eigenstate. So now we have this formula, so let's try to understand and interpret this, and then an equivalent similar physical picture will emerge, and that will help us to remember this complicated formula. This is basically exactly the same formula as equation 12, which we derived in more direct method, but now we are deriving it using this interaction picture propagator. So let's see. Okay, so now we derived this equation 12, which we already derived first once by the straightforward and simple method, and this time we use this interaction picture, and it's a much more elegant picture, as we understood that we can now derive an arbitrarily higher order term in a much more elegant manner and to make a physical sense of each of this term. So now let's see, this is a cumbersome equation and long equation. Let's try to see if we can physically interpret each of this term. Then we don't have to remember it, like it is, each of these term represents a physical process. So in order to do that, let's first look at go term by term. Let's look at the first term. The first term is an obvious, it's a stationary state evolution equation. It just tells you if you are an eigenstate I0, you can go to what is the amplitude of going to the eigenstate F0 as if there is no perturbation present. So that is the 0th order term. I would like to call it a 0th order term, because here as if the Vi, the perturbation term, is not present. So the first non-trivial term is the second term, which is let's again, our rule is to read it from right to left. So when we do that, so let's see what happened. So from T0 to T prime, so you can also visualize it through the diagram. So from the T0 to T prime, we started with an eigenstate I0, which is an eigenstate of the H0 unperturbed Hamiltonian. It picks up a phase which comes from the stationary state. If a stationary state evolves under a Hamiltonian HS0, the only effect of the stationary state is to pick up a phase, and that phase shows up here. So it is basically EI0 T minus T0. So that is the part of the Hamiltonian which comes it, and then at T prime, again go to the diagram, it meets the perturbation, which is the potential V, and with an amplitude it convert into state F0, and then it evolves as an eigenstate F0 till time t, again under the stationary state evolution, and the only effect of that is to pick up a phase EF0, e to the power minus I EF0, and that is what shows up here. So that is basically the physical interpretation of the first order term, and the total amplitude to end up from I0 to F0 is obtained by integrating over all the times at which the transition could have taken place. So that is basically this T prime, the intermediate state, and that is integrated from T0 to T. So that is the first order transition, which corresponds to the process I to F, or state I0 to F0. I'm just dropping the not subscript. Okay, now the third term. So what happens in the third term? Again, the system can go from I0 to F0 via an intermediate step. So that is a second order process. So first one was 0th order, this second one was first order, now third one is I call it the second order process. So what is that intermediate or virtual state? So you have came across these virtual states before also. So what is this virtual state? It is basically a state where the system can go, but it is eventually you will measure it from at a defined state. So this allowed state comes from this, which the way you interpret this formula is through this allowed state. So the system goes from I to N, which is the allowed intermediate step, and then it goes to F. So for that it picks up three phase factors. One is I0, which takes it from the first. Again, go back to the diagram. One comes from here, one comes from here, one comes from here. So they are given by I0, N0 and F0. So three free propagation, and twice it meets a scattering. And the way to interpret is that the system first jumps into a virtual state, and then it jumps into the final state, desired state, and that is how you compute the probability. And you of course sum over all the intermediate possible virtual states it can jump into at the all possible intermediate times. So that's why you get these two time integrals. So that is all the possible process. Remember physically that what is happening, a quantum mechanical system has superposition. That's why all the processes which are allowed, which can happen, it's a superposition of all the processes. That's why you have these kind of sums, and which is represented by integral because the time is continuous here, but the n is discrete. So the second order amplitude is a two-state process. So sum over all the intermediate states at all time, which you have to do. Similarly, you can interpret higher order terms so on as a multi-state process. So that this physical interpretation is very important. It's usually not very well explained in the book, but I want you to keep this picture in your head such that you remember these formulas very easily and understand physically what is happening when you keep certain terms in a higher order perturbation theory. And also because of the presence of an epsilon in the front, which comes from this V, the probability amplitude reduces as you go to higher order. So that is also why it is justified to keep only a few terms for a given physical problem. Okay, now let's do an example to understand how these things come into place. So this example is given as an exercise, or maybe partly solved, or maybe it is solved in the book of Shankar in 18.2.1 and 18.2.2. It's a very simple problem which you can do just by plug and play. Just plug in the formulas which you have derived, and you extract the results and try to physically make sense what is happening here. So what is the problem? The problem is you have a charge Q in a one-dimensional harmonic oscillator in a classical electromagnetic field. So remember one thing, that so far we have planned to treat the electromagnetic field entirely as a classical object. We have not dealt with the photons yet, or we have not quantized the electromagnetic field. That is something we'll do later, but let's just imagine that the field is classical, but the particle you are interested in is a quantum mechanical object. So that is a form of approximation which is true in certain limits, but not always true when you try to probe things at much higher energy. So what is the temperature, what is the electromagnetic field time dependence? So let us say it is a decaying in time. So that happens in transient fields. It's a very practical system in experiments. So in a transient field, it looks like Et vector is E naught e to the power minus t minus t. So it's just how the magnitude operates. And for simplicity, we can assume it's in a particular direction x. So the Hamiltonian will look like px square by 2m plus half m omega square x square minus q x cap E naught e to the power minus t by t. So that's the potential. So for variation, there are a couple of variations of this problem you can try. Usually you will find it in different books, and they are basically just different experimental situations. In one case, let's say you toggle a switch and turn on the electric field for a time period from 0 to tau, and then you switch it off again. So that's a time dependent perturbation. What you did, you turned on a disturbance for some time and switched it off. Another classic example is the Gaussian profile. You can have a electromagnetic field whose time dependence is Gaussian like, which is e to the power minus t by tau square. But here we are looking at a decaying form. All these problems have some interesting outcomes, but I will just do one example, and I expect you to work out the others by yourself. It's very simple. It's just a formula. All you have to do is some integrations, and if you are lazy, you can do it in Mathematica. So it's really trivial. Okay. So now let's look at the time t equal to 0. So we expect that that's how we played this game before, that we put the oscillator in one of the states of the H0 of the unperturbed Hamiltonian, and that is not necessarily always true in a practical system, but in a practical system it will be an arbitrary state which can be written as a sum of, because it's a complete set of states, it can be written as a sum of with some coefficient of all the other states, which we have discussed this before. So now let's do the simplest case where time t equal to 0, the oscillator is in the ground state of the H0. What is the probability that the oscillator will be in a particular excited state at t equal to infinity? So that's the question we are interested in. So let's calculate this just using the formula blindly, which we know. So this is Cn at time t, we put infinity, so the integration range is 0 to infinity, which is a simple integral to handle. It will have a harmonic part which will come from the dynamics, quantum mechanical dynamics, and it will have another decaying part which comes from the particular choice of time dependence we have taken. And we want that what is the probability that the system will go to some other state, and it's different from the state where it started from. We will see that there will be some additional complication when we will like to know that what is the probability that the system stays at the same state. There is some singularities will appear, and we'll learn how to deal with that. But for now, let's look at the simple question that we want to know what is the probability the system will go to some other state of the original unperturbed Hamiltonian. So you compute this by writing the x in the second quantization form or the ladder operator form. We know that this algebra becomes really easy when you do that. So when you compute this, you obtain this part will give you nothing, and that overlap will be 0 because these states are orthogonal, but this part will give you 1 only when n is 1. So the only possible transition for this kind of perturbation is from 0 to 1. All other probability amplitudes are 0. So we just evaluate this formula. It is very simple to evaluate this kind of, you can think it's a Fourier transform of this exponentially decaying function, and that is nothing but tau by 1 minus I omega tau, and with this prefactor. So what is the probability? Square it. The probability is simply this. It's a Lorentzian form which has a peak at middle, and we will discuss this physical interpretation of this later. So this is the form you will get. What is the probability amplitude of transition from from ground state to first excited state at a long time t tends to infinity, and we understood that the probability amplitude for transition for any other state is 0. So you can indirectly obtain that what is the probability amplitude of staying at that at the original what is the probability amplitude of staying at the ground state. It is basically 1 minus this p0 to 1. So these are the only two possible things it can happen for this problem. So also you can see this is the first example of selection rule. You can see the selection rule tells you that there is a strict probability amplitude, the probability amplitude strictly goes to 0 for many other states apart from some very particular states. In this case, that is n equal to 1. So in the spectroscopy, when you study spectroscopy or study atomic physics, you will see many examples of this kind of selection rules for many other problems. Now where did this selection rule comes from? If you step back and try to look at this problem from a little distance, you will see that the selection rule comes from the form of the disturbance, because in this problem the potential, the x appears in this linear form. So that is why you get this kind of selection rule. If this would have been a square or cube, you would have gotten some more selection rules. So that's what I described here. Since the position operator in the perturbating electric dipole Hamiltonian involves a single raising and lowering operator, the only transition in which the quantum number of the oscillator changes is by 1. and that is the only permitted transition within the first order perturbation theory. Because if you include the second order perturbation theory, you will see that there are other transitions possible with a much lower probability amplitude. Now if you can ignore that higher probability amplitude, then that is a so if you can ignore that higher probability amplitude, then I think you can and that is justified because your parameter is small compared to other scales of the problem, and then this answer is good enough. But if you cannot, then you have to go for these higher order terms. Okay, now let me quickly overview that what are some other possibilities. Like if you take this electric field to be Gaussian like, you know the Gaussian's Fourier transform is Gaussian. So that is you can, even without solving the problem, you know the first order Fourier transform will be the functional form of the probability amplitude. So Gaussian's Fourier transform is Gaussian, so you get another Gaussian form. And similarly, if you know that when it is a Lorentzian form like this, you will get in this case like exponentially decaying form. So these are the some other possible cases which I encourage you to solve and look up. And if you want to look at the time dependent Stark effect, which we have studied, Stark effect, which is basically effect of a strong electric field, strong, weak or intermediate electric field on hydrogen atom. Now we have done the static problem. Now what happens if the electric field is time dependent? So that you can look up that example from Shankar. Now in the rest of this lecture, I will study, we'll do case study for different kind of perturbations, and it will turn out each of them reveals some interesting and different form of physics. And by that I mean some different, so not different form of physics, but some more different kind of phenomena. Of course, it's the same rules of physics. So what are the other possible and interesting examples which we encountered in a practical system and which can lead to some very interesting phenomena are listed here. So for example, if we have a decaying perturbation, a perturbation which is transient time, that's what we just did. It could be a Gaussian form, or it could be a exponentially decaying form, or some other kind of form like a spike. A spike form is possible. For example, if I take the Lorentzian and make this width of the Lorentzian very small, which comes from this tau, then you will get a very spike perturbation. It is like you toggle a switch for a small time and then you switch it off, and that is like a spike disturbance in the system. How the system reacts to that, how the probability amplitude states. So that tells a lot about the system's internal characteristics. This is often used in experiments for probing a system, like tickle the system for a little short time and see how the system responds. It's common from experiment. Now there are two more cases which we'll do in detail. One is adiabatic perturbation and another is sudden perturbation. They are basically two extreme cases. Adiabatic perturbation is when you turn on the perturbation super slowly, so slowly that the system almost follows the perturbation and gets a lot of time to adjust with the perturbation. So we have seen the example of this kind of thing in thermodynamics and other cases, when you change the system in time but slowly, that it is almost at each moment the system as if it is like a static, it remains in the statics of the state of the Hamiltonian at that given instant. But you can do the other thing, which is sudden perturbation. You switch on, you make a large change in the system or disturb the systems in a very short time interval. It is like switching on some field and turning it off immediately, or just switching it on and keeping it like that. So then the system doesn't get any time to respond to it. So that's a sudden perturbation, and we'll see interesting examples for that. So the adiabatic perturbation and sudden perturbation are these two extreme possible cases. We have already done the two-state system example, which is exactly solvable and leads to very interesting physics. And another two class of problems. One is a harmonic perturbation, which is very common. When you disturb a system by an electromagnetic field, that is like a sinusoidal perturbation, a harmonic perturbation. We will learn this case in detail, but before that we will learn a simpler case which reveals a lot of rich and interesting physics, is the constant perturbation. So all you do, you switch on a perturbation and let the system evolve at time t equal to 0, and let the system evolve under that constant switched on field. So we will see what happens in this case. Now we will do this case study in detail.